Summertime is here, and there's nothing more American than a slice of ice-cold watermelon on a hot day. Did you know that 4 states produce nearly 3/4 of the watermelons in the United States? Florida leads the way with nearly 30% of the U.S. production, with Georgia, California, and Texas making up the next 44%. On this episode of FieldLink, we catch up with Helena representatives in South Texas to gain valuable insight on how watermelon production in the Lone Star State supplies nearly all of the consumption needs for the central part of the United States. Have you ever wondered how to pick the perfect watermelon? We visit with Maycey Kight. She's the 2024 Georgia Watermelon Brand Ambassador, and she shares some valuable tips and tricks on picking the perfect watermelon for your 4th of July celebration. Finally, Jody Lawrence joins us from Nashville to discuss how commodity markets will react to the heavy rains and flooding that's impacted much of the northern Corn Belt. Stay tuned for this episode of FieldLink. Mark your calendars for July 18th to join us here in Memphis, Tennessee for the Innovation Expo. Learn about the latest in technology from the Helena Products Group. Talk to your Helena representative to learn more and join us here in Memphis on Thursday, July 18th. Welcome to FieldLink. We're going to continue our journey talking a little bit about vegetables today. And in a few moments, we're going to deep dive a little deeper into watermelons here. It's that time of season. We're approaching the 4th of July, and we've got a lot of growers kicking out watermelons across the country. Fruit stands are definitely filling up. You can check the shelves. They're all over the place, and it's watermelon season. So to start things off here, we traveled down to the Lone Star State of Texas today, and we're going to catch up with Clayton Martin. Clayton, he is a sales representative for Helena in Alamo, Texas. Clayton, welcome to FieldLink.
How you doing, Bill?
Hey, man, I'm doing really well up here. And how's the weather down in South Texas today?
I'm currently sitting here looking out the window right now. We're in the middle of a tropical low. I don't think it made it to a storm yet. They named it, but I think it's still in the low range. But we were supposed to get 6, 8, 10 inches of rain today, and I think we're at about an inch and a quarter right now. So not near what we were hoping we would get out of it, but at least it's raining.
You got some moisture coming your way. It's take it when we can get it, but boy, you like to spoon feed it, don't you?
Yeah, our lakes are dry, and we're trying to figure out how we're going to farm next year. So we're hoping for a hurricane or two this year, so we can keep on going.
Yeah, definitely a different story up north for sure. Also joining us on today's podcast is Adam Bush. He is a Helena Products Manager, also out of Texas. Adam, welcome to FieldLink.
Hey, glad to be here, Bill.
Hey, guys, we're going to talk a little bit about some veggies today. You're in a pretty unique part of Texas, Clayton. You know, when we think of Texas, most of us think cotton and wheat and a little bit of corn in some pockets, but boy, that's not the case exactly where you're at in Clayton. Tell us a little bit about Alamo and some of the crops that you grow down your way.
So we're in a cool area. We've got the right climate temperature to grow lots of different types of vegetables. Some of the bigger packing shed growers down here, we've got in a range of about 50 different types of vegetables that we grow on a yearly basis. We're also growing fruit and the oranges, grapefruits, trying a few other commodities on that tree market. We've got a very big dryland market down here too, which is corn, cotton, milo, sesame. We were up until about 3 months ago, we had the only sugarcane mill in the state of Texas, and we were growing 50,000 acres of sugarcane on a yearly basis. But because of our water situation and us not having water for the last 3 years, we had to shut the mill down. So, but we're in an area where we get to do and experience a lot of different crops.
Wow, that's really exciting, and to learn about, you know, it sounds like you've been in a pretty good drought here recently. Can you expand on that a little bit?
We sit along the Rio Grande River. Our water is dependent on what water we have in the Rio Grande River. Part of that's fed from the Colorado River that comes out down through New Mexico. The other part is fed by 7 tributaries or lakes in Mexico. The bulk of of our water comes from Mexico. Back in the 1944, the U.S. and Mexico signed a treaty to where they would disperse water evenly into the Rio Grande River, feeding Mexico and South Texas. Since the 1970s, they have not held up to their end of the bargain. And since the 1960s, they have actually dammed up all 7 of those tributaries.
Oh, wow.
In the state of Chihuahua, Mexico right now, back in the early 60s, there was 0 farmland in the desert. and currently they're sitting at a little over 350,000 acres of irrigated farmland in the Chihuahuan Desert. So they are using our water, what is owed to us as U.S. citizens, to support their farming in Chihuahua. So because of that, their rainfall down in the rainforest and the mountains has been kind of low in the last 3 to 4 years, and the snow cap has been kind of low in the 3 to 4 years. So us being the last user of water in South Texas or in Tamaulipas, Mexico, we've been kind of getting the short end of the stick and not crying for us, but our people, Mexico citizens across the river in Tamaulipas, are in the same boat as we are. They're on very strict water restrictions, just like we are.
It's amazing how that journey really does continue back to the 60s with some of those agreements and how they've, I guess, transitioned over time, it sounds like.
I've met with politicians and ag commissioners. I've actually got a roundtable discussion with our ag commissioner on this Friday. I'm trying to voice my opinion along with a lot of our farmers' opinions and trying to get our word out, trying to make it back to Washington, because it's not a Texas deal, and that's what people don't understand. It has nothing to do with our Texas legislation. It's all a U.S. treaty, and we've got to get our voice heard back up to Washington.
No, that's a very important message for U.S. producers to send, not just Texas growers and certainly you as a Helena representative, but certainly tip of the Stetson, Clayton, for leading that effort there for water rights down in the Texas-Mexico border. Let's talk a little bit about veggies. You talked about 50 different crops that you're working with. Let's talk about some of the highlights in that area. How's the season gone this year, and what are some highlights, I guess, that you can share with our listeners?
So in my area, I'm on the western end of the county there's 4 counties that make up the Rio Grande Valley that we call it. I'm on the western end of it. Luckily, on my water irrigation districts, I haven't been limited to water. Some of my coworkers that work on the eastern side towards the coast, those guys have been limited on water for the last couple of years. So their onion production and their cabbage production have kind of gone by the wayside. They're growing a lot of dryland crops over there, what used to be vegetable production. But where I am, we're still growing quite a bit of vegetables. I would say my biggest commodity in the last couple of years has been onions. We have really ramped up on the onion production down here. We grow a Texas sweet onion, and we can grow it really, really, really good. So we do that quite a bit. Cabbage is a big commodity for us as well. And then we just kind of follow it with the broccolis, the cauliflowers, the beets, celery. Those kind of vegetables are kind of some of our big ones.
And Adam Bush, you get to work this particular part of the market in other parts of Texas, and I believe even into New Mexico from time to time. Tell us a little bit about, some of the challenge agronomically that you've discovered by working with your agri-intelligence team to help Clayton as well as his customers produce a more profitable crop.
One thing that comes to mind is the type of ground that we've got. Typically a really sandy soil across the board. That means that the ability for us to hold water, to hold nutrients a lot, doesn't really come into play as much as it does like over in the NBU where they've got good black dirt. We're fighting to hold on to nutrients and water. And so we really have to kind of rely on the HPG line to help benefit us because we're not always able to pull everything out of the soil. And so we're relying on extractor samples or for our foliar needs or pulling soil samples to kind of get a better understanding of what our CECs look like and the ability for us to hold nutrients there.
Clayton, talk to us a little bit about extractor. How have you implemented that, I guess, in your day-to-day operations there in Alamo?
Like Adam said, we farm on 40-acre blocks down here where I am in our vegetable ground. And in that 40-acre block, we have got so much variability, whether it be sand, whether it be calcium, whether it be boron toxicity. I mean, we have some corners that we found boron toxicity and that we can't farm anymore. So we've learned a lot by running the dual EM and pulling the soil samples and doing the high ground work on some of these fields. And once we learned all that, then we started fine-tuning everything. And extractor's really been the biggest avenue for us on that. We're pulling, like on our watermelons and our onions, we're pulling weekly tissue reports.
Okay.
We're relying on what that information tells us, and we're changing midweek. We might have a plan. Hey, we're bulbing on our onion crop. We get our tissue reports back, and what we thought we were going to do is completely different than what we go out with that week. So we're making weekly decisions based off our extractor reports And that's been a huge game changer for us. We've seen increased yields, mainly with watermelons and some of the cucurbits, squashes and the cucumbers. But we've seen some increased yields by doing this, and stuff that we were missing in the past. We thought we knew what we were doing. We've been able to kind of fine tune now going forward.
Yeah, that's a great story. And with Extractor, you said it, Clayton, in your words. Extractor uncovers some things that the naked eye can sometimes miss, and that's the power of that technology. Adam, what are some of the things that have traditionally been missed kind of in this market that you've been able to supplement with some Helena products from, I guess, that information we're pulling from Extractor?
Yeah, I think that one of the things that we've missed early on has been the phosphate piece for us. We typically see that we're a little low there. That's driven some sales of Elemax High Phos for us. That's got an EDTA chelated micronutrient package as well as an 8-30-2. So a pretty well-rounded fertilizer program in there, and really able to pull up some of those phosphate deficiencies that we've really seen. That's been something we've done out west, and we've looked at all-around nutritional packages, whether that's been something with ENC in that mix, or 1165, or an all-around kind of boost of health with something like Orbix. So really, it's been all across the board of providing value to that grower just by looking at a foliar sample.
Clayton, you talked a little bit earlier about using Extractor in your watermelon side of things, and for growers that are raising watermelons. And as we mentioned on the front end of this podcast, we want to focus a little bit on watermelons today. Tell us a little bit about your watermelon market, and then let's talk about production. But tell us a little, broadly speaking, how many acres are we looking in your market? How big a crop is it for you?
We're probably around that 2,000 to 3,000 acres of watermelons a year.
Wow.
I would say that's probably a pretty fair number. We'll give or take. We've had 3,500 down to 1,500, but we stay 2,500 pretty much yearly. So it's quite a bit. I mean, we're growing watermelons on a big scale.
Yeah. So, okay, let's break this down, because many of our listeners, they might have a watermelon patch, meaning 1 or 2 mounds right at home in their garden. But with those kind of acres, I mean, help me understand, help our listeners understand what kind of size and scope that really is. 2,000-3,000 acres of watermelon. How many melons can be produced on an acre in your market today?
Our general rule of thumb is we're trying to get about 60, 70, 80,000 pounds of watermelons to the acre. We'll cut watermelons 4 to 5 times, hopefully. This year we were a little bit light. Our watermelon crop was light this year, but we're looking for 80,000 pounds to the acre. You pick up a normal watermelon at a store and it's weighing 18 to 22 pounds. I mean, you can kind of do the math how many of those watermelons need to come out of that acre of land.
Wow. So it really does add up. That's a lot of melons that are coming out of your part of Texas, for sure.
Correct. Yeah, we start the U.S. market down here. So we generally start harvest first part of May. I think this year we were May 3rd or 4th when we started, and we'll try to run as long as we can in June, depending on the weather. This year we had a really hot May and June. Well, second part of May and early June, and our crop didn't come back like it generally does, but it's okay. It's part of the nature of the beast. But yeah, we're producing a lot of watermelons out of this area.
So Clayton, how do growers in your market, how do they market their melons? Are they going to big box grocery stores, or how are they produced?
Yeah, so we're not fruit stand. We're not growing watermelons for fruit stands. We're growing for your H-E-Breeze, your Walmarts, your Krogers, Brookshire Brothers. I can't think all the ones up Midwest, but there's a handful of them. So we, like I said, we get to start the season. So Nogales, Mexico, south of Arizona, their season starts about the same time our season does. So they kind of start supplying that eastern coast, and we kind of start supplying the north and a little bit on the East Coast, depending on Florida's market. But we basically take the whole center of the U.S. to start with. So we've got to produce a melon as early as we can to keep the guys in Central Texas and the guys in the Panhandle of Texas, so they can keep it going for the rest of the season.
Yeah, so you're kind of the first one to the plate, so to speak, for supplying melons to that, I guess, central U.S. corridor for the most part, is what I'm hearing.
Very much so.
And you produce until did you say around May, June? Is that kind of when things start to wrap up?
Our plan, and we've done it in years past, is we want to try to run watermelons all the way through July 4th.
Okay.
If I'm a grower and I'm looking on the long term scale of things, if I can keep that plant alive and keep producing good sugar, vibrant melons, I'm going to try to produce it as long as I can. And if we can get to July 4th, it's a very big peak in price and demand, and it's really good for us if we can get there. But it's 100% weather related at that point. Everything's got to align and be perfect in order for us to get that long. We generally July or June 5th. June 15th, somewhere in that ballpark, we're starting to slow down quite a bit. We're getting hot. We're 100 plus degrees for 20 days in a row at that point in time, and our watermelons start to fall pretty heavy.
The one thing I want to add into that, Bill, is going back to what we talked about, that soils piece. One thing is picking up the nutrients in the soil along with the fertilizer that we've put out there. We've really found that additions of whether we're using our hydrohume or receptor through the drip and able to pull up more nutrients, that's been one thing that's helped drive that a little bit more than anything. Wouldn't you agree, Clayton?
I would agree. We're you can go back to the agri-intelligence portion of this, but we've really started to spoon feed these things. So I say we're growing lots and lots and lots of acres, but every acre is getting treated specifically for that acre. So what we're doing on the west field might not be the same exact thing that we're doing on the east field. So we're spoon feeding these things as they're needed and what's needed of them, so we can try to produce and get as much quality and quantity out of each individual acre. And that's where it becomes really, really fun, because that's where the science gets involved. Adam and I talk on a daily basis about, hey, I need this, or my extractors reports are showing this. What avenue can we go down? And that's where it becomes fun, because you can reap the rewards of the benefits there.
Well, I think it's really exciting to hear you kind of talk, Clayton, and your passion certainly comes out in your voice. And when you and Adam and others from the Helena team partner up to lead with science, and it sounds like that's what you're doing here through the Agri-Intelligence program, and then backing it up with some products out of Adam's portfolio and the Helena Products Group to I guess, fix some of those challenges that may be discovered through the AI system.
Very much so. Yeah, our local AI guy is on a first name phone call with my growers. He talks to some of my growers probably more than I do. They call him and ask questions, and hey, I'm seeing this in the field. Can you run over and see if you can figure it out? Clayton's on the way. I mean, we're working as a whole team and unit down here to solve and fix issues.
No, that's exciting. As you talk to your producers, what does the future for watermelon production look like in South Texas?
Well, if we weren't in a water situation, it would be vibrant. I mean, we everybody depends on us for watermelons, good sweet watermelon. With our water situation this next year, it's kind of up in the air right now. We're if we don't get a hurricane by September, unfortunately, our watermelon acres are probably going to decrease dramatically, just because of the water restrictions that we're going to be on. I don't know what those acres will go into. It probably won't be vegetables. It'll be a dryland corn, dryland cotton, something on insurance. But yeah, if we don't get the water that we're owed or allocated, our watermelon production is going to be very, very skim next year.
Well, water is very important for many, many parts of the country, and South Texas is no different. Adam, we've had some newer products being recently introduced into this market. Would some of those products be a fit for Clayton?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we could look at number one, controlling our salts with something like a liquid chisel application to push those salts down. Whenever you don't have as much water, you're getting more salts out there. Another thing that comes to mind is an application of resgenics. That's something that we're starting to play with more and more. Slightly starting to dip our toes in it. The one thing that I think that I'd like to see that is out early and make sure that we're getting that crop up and getting roots established so we can get some runners going.
Yeah, Resgenics is an interesting product. It had it on the market for a couple of years, and I think it's safe to say, Adam, we're still exploring in some markets, getting our feet wet, so to speak. And no pun intended there, Clayton. But great opportunities looking ahead. We're doing a lot of research here in Memphis at the Helena Products Group at the Innovation Expo. We've got a whole series. We're doing some deep discovery there with Resgenics, and certainly I know Adam, you and your colleagues in Texas are doing a lot of research as well. So certainly might be an opportunity in the future.
Yeah, Adam and I actually met with one of my customers. I want to say back in March. We didn't do it on the watermelons, but we're actually gonna do some foliar or not well bare ground trials of resgenics with water meters in fields, stripping some fields with resgenics, untreated and treated checks with water meters on drip and flood irrigation. Just trying to put that stuff to the test and seeing what we can really get out of it and benefit from it.
So, Adam, talking a little bit about Resgenics, we're still learning a lot about that product. It's a great product, has some wonderful benefits. You're doing some additional research in your market to help better understanding how to manage that product, right?
Yeah, no, I think one of the important things for us is getting interns in Helena and the Helena culture, right? And at East Bernard, I have an intern, and I got himself a water probe, and he's going to go out and we're looking at turf farms with the sheer amount of water that those typically take, and just making sure that an application of resgenics is helping us allow us to hold on to more water, especially with our sandier soils like we've talked about in the past.
Yeah, well, I think that's a great opportunity for that young man to get out there and learn about some new products and apply some agronomic technology there as well. And, provide some, local insight back to you and your producers in that market. Certainly a lot of great opportunities with Genix that we're learning more and more about, and we're excited about that product. Adam, we talked a little bit about a couple other products that have been, I guess, tried and true. And it sounds like Orbix and Coron are still some mainstays for all of you in Texas, especially South Texas.
Yeah, no, I mean, Coron Metra is a wonderful product for us. That's our controlled release nitrogen. Really, really efficient foliar nutrition is what it comes down to. With, you've got a unique controlled release property that's built into that, and as well as some ENC formulation technology that helps drive it in there a little bit more. Orbix is another thing that comes to my mind when we're talking about after cutting. You want to establish some more runners to get out there and grow some more melons. Sealing off that wounding stress that we see whenever we're picking up those watermelons, it can help lead to a beneficial result for us with those watermelons, just aiding in getting that wounding stress out of there.
Yeah, it kind of goes back to what Clayton said. We're doing a really, really good job, he and his team, of spoon feeding this crop. And those two products, are really, truly in line with what's being asked from customers, but also from the extractor samples.
Exactly. And that's the only way to approach it in my mind. It's not a shotgun approach. It's really a precise approach for what we're doing down to the block.
Well, Clayton, I want to thank you for joining us here from Alamo, Texas, to teach us a little bit about some of the cropping systems, vegetables down in South Texas, specifically watermelons. And Adam also joining us from Texas today, Helena Products Group product manager. Guys, thanks for joining us here on this episode of FieldLink.
Thanks, Bill.
Thank you, Bill.
Your crop is hungry. What are you waiting for? With Coron Metra from Helena, you can build stronger, more productive plants. Leverage controlled release nitrogen with our ENC formulation technology. This means your crop gets enhanced nutrient uptake and higher yield potential, while you get improved tank mix compatibility. An industry leader, it delivers superior plant safety for a variety of crops, addressing needs in season. Coron Metra, the original sustainable source of nitrogen.
And welcome back to FieldLink. We're excited today to have joining us here on the FieldLink podcast, the 2024 Georgia Watermelon Brand Ambassador, Maycey Kight. Maycey, welcome to FieldLink.
Thank you, Mr. Bill. Thank you.
Well, Maycey, tell us a little bit about you before we start diving in and talking about being the 2024 Georgia Watermelon Brand Ambassador. Tell us about you. Where's home and where'd you grow up?
So I am born and raised in Moultrie, Georgia. I grew up, so my dad is in veggie production. So I grew up all around vegetables, and I knew that my heart and soul was in production, and I knew that's where I wanted to go and where I wanted to be one day. And so I'm currently a junior at Abraham Baldwin Agricultural College in Tifton, where I study crop and soil science.
Awesome. So you grew up on a farm, and your family has a vegetable farm, correct?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. What kind we've got listeners from around the world. What kind of veggies do you grow, Maycey, at home?
So we grow cabbage, broccoli, zucchini, cucumbers, squash, tomatoes, peppers, eggplant, all the things.
A little bit of
A
everything.
little bit of everything besides watermelon. We don't grow any watermelon, sadly.
Well, let's talk about watermelon today. Today, you're representing the Georgia Watermelon Group, and you're the brand ambassador for Georgia Watermelon. Tell us a little bit about that role, and how did you get that role?
So I applied for the role. It was posted at the college that I go to as a scholarship opportunity because it is a scholarship-based program. And so I had to write an essay to get in or to be one of the finalists. And then the finalists are selected to go to St. Simon's for the annual Georgia Watermelon Convention. And there I had an interview, an onstage question, and a lot of other things that I had to do just for networking and all that to make sure that my heart and soul was in the watermelon and that I truly loved it, and I truly do.
Awesome. Well, Maycey, tell us a little bit about the industry in Georgia as it relates to watermelons. Watermelon is a very important crop in the state of Georgia. Set the stage for us. How big is the watermelon industry in your state?
So in Georgia, we actually have the watermelon capital of the world actually in Cordele, Georgia, which is amazing. And it is a really great city to have. So we grow lots and lots of watermelon in Georgia. We are one of the 5 biggest states in watermelon production.
Okay. And talk to us, some of our listeners, what's the growing season in Georgia for watermelons?
Harvesting actually begins the second week of June and runs through July 4th. And it is a 80 to 90 day process from the seed all the way to maturity for the watermelon.
Oh, so we're talking to plant a watermelon and then harvest it 80 to 90 days is what we're looking at.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
And what are some of the typical markets for watermelons today from a consumption standpoint? Do they go to homeowners or do they go to restaurants? What do you see there from a production standpoint?
So from a production standpoint, it literally could go anywhere. So there are over 1,000, 1,500 different varieties of watermelon, and some varieties of watermelon are grown just for cut production, which is when you go to Publix and you find those watermelons that are already cut up for you, sliced up for you. Those are just for them. And then there are also these other watermelon varieties that are grown for your consumers just to grab off the shelf and take home, or there are some that are going to go to restaurants. But mostly, so seedless watermelon really has just taken the whole watermelon industry away by storm. And we mainly, anywhere you go, you're going to find a seedless watermelon over a seeded watermelon. So there are 5 main groups of watermelon, which is seedless, seeded, and then there are mini, orange, and yellow.
Yeah, and you talk about the minis. Tell us a little bit. Expand on that a little bit.
So I actually cut a mini watermelon this morning. They're about this, about 5-6 inches, and I will say they aren't as sweet as a normal watermelon, but for like just a little family or a little get together that you're throwing, and you just need a little small watermelon, not the whole thing. That one really is a great choice.
Okay, yeah, I actually saw them for the first time last night in Costco. There was a whole pallet of them, a small mini one, about the size of a softball, wouldn't you say?
They're pretty small.
Awesome. Maycey, being an ambassador, you've obviously got to know a little bit about watermelons. Tell our listeners, because we're getting close to the 4th of July. It's summertime and the watermelons are starting to really show up at the grocery stores. What's the best way to pick out a watermelon?
So the best way to pick out a watermelon is literally as simple as look, lift, and turn. It is very easy to remember. So first, you're going to look at the watermelon. You're going to make sure there's no bumps, bruises, and dents on there. I mean, of course, there's going to be a few just because it goes through a lot to get into the grocery store. And then you're going to lift that watermelon. And when you lift that watermelon, you want it to be super heavy for its size, since it is 92% water. And then you're going to turn that watermelon over, and on the belly is going to be a yellow spot. You want it to be a butter yellow, not really a white. You want it to be more of a butter yellow, and that's the ground spot where it has grown on that one side for all that time in the field. And you're going to know after that it is a sweet and juicy watermelon, and that is the one that you're going to want to take home.
Gotcha. Maycey, what are some of the, challenges that watermelon producers are faced with today?
So there are lots of challenges for anybody in the production world right now, mainly watermelon people. So different different places that you go, or like different places where watermelon's grown, I think that Georgia has the best like timing for like watermelon harvesting because it is ready on 4th of July. Like 4th of July, watermelon is stocked and ready to go. Some of your higher states are going to be later August until the watermelons are just being on the shelf, which could hurt that state and hurt the farmers. And then you have Florida where they're done with watermelons and I mean, they don't have anywhere else to go.
Right. So production and timing is really critical based on consumption, based on where geographically these crops are grown. And it sounds like Georgia's kind of in that sweet spot
That's
where
right.
you're delivering that crop around the 4th of July. Tell us a little bit, how many producers are currently producing watermelon in the state of Georgia?
In the state of Georgia, I don't have a number. I would have to get back to you on that one. But there are small producers or large producers, I would say anywhere in the couple hundred ranges.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. And are you seeing the industry expanding? What's the demand for watermelon in your area today?
So watermelon is a fruit / vegetable that everyone's going to always love. It's always going to be there. People are always going to want to grab it just because whenever they think of watermelon, they think of happy, they think of summertime, and everyone's going to want to grab a watermelon. So I personally don't think that the demand is going to go down anytime soon. And so in that case, I really hope that we have an increase of supply too that goes along with it.
Awesome. That's great. Great to hear. And Maycey, as the brand ambassador, what are some of your duties currently? What's on your schedule for the rest of the summer?
So I just left a interview this morning with our local TV station. I did a little kitchen show with them this morning, and then next week I'll actually be going to DC for the whole Washington conference thing, lobbying for Georgia watermelon.
Okay, so you're spending some time on the road in
Yeah.
front of the media promoting watermelon for the industry in the state of Georgia and really beyond. Is that accurate?
Yes, that is. I could be seen anywhere from a 5K, a children's elementary school, grocery stores, anywhere. I could be seen anywhere. NASCAR race. I was at a NASCAR race a few weeks ago, which was awesome. But yeah, I could be seen anywhere.
That's a great addition, and it's very important for ambassadors like yourself to be promoting some of the industries like watermelon in the state of Georgia and beyond, for that matter. So Maycey, as we wrap up here, where can folks, our listeners, where can they go to learn more about the watermelon industry and really about the ambassadorship that you're working on?
So to learn more about the watermelon industry as a whole for the whole U.S., you can go to watermelon.org and they will give you lots of recipes, tips, and tricks for watermelon, and we'll just show you the whole rundown of the industry where you can find people in it, how to locate a good watermelon, how to pick out a watermelon if you already forgot, and a lot of other things for kids during the summer. And it is just a great place to go. And you can follow me as well on Instagram at Georgia Watermelon Ambassador, as well as Georgia Watermelon on Facebook too.
Awesome. Great insight. What's that website again, Maycey? One more time.
Watermelon.org.
Watermelon.org, folks. You can go learn about watermelons. It's that time of year. Take advantage of some of those awesome recipes out there and dive in and carve up a watermelon this summer. Thanks, Maycey, for joining us here on Field.
Yeah, thank you.
Welcome back to FieldLink. I'm your host, Bill Smith, and joining us from Nashville's Jody Lawrence. And Jody, we've got a planted acreage report coming up here pretty soon here this Friday. But right now it doesn't look like there's going to be a whole lot of market moving once that report hits. Jody, welcome to FieldLink.
Oh, well, thank you, Bill. It's good to be back. This is heading into this report this week, that last week of June. So much always happens because it's such a critical time as we look ahead for weather, starting to look at when first kind of pollination dates are popping up. And then the stock, you have the July first notice day for the July futures for both corn and beans and wheat, all three, so that if anybody's got anything stored or on a basis contract, they kind of feel like their hand is being forced a little bit to make a decision. Do you roll the contract? Do you not? And there are mixed arguments on both sides, but if it's costing you anything to store it, please get rid of it. I realize prices are down, but there are a lot of ways to address that. But really, we want to talk about Friday's acreage report because this is the biggest report of the season. We do have some fairly good ideas what may be coming in, because despite the inconsistent spring planting season, we don't see a lot of prevent plant. Now, the flooding that occurred over the weekend, and our hearts go out to everybody affected by that in Iowa, the Dakotas, Minnesota, Michigan, Wisconsin, every place that got hit so hard, that this report will not catch whatever acres may be taken to insurance for just being washed out. But it looks like the planted acreage are going to come in for corn a little over 90, somewhere between 90 and 90 and a half million. The March estimate was right at 90. On beans, we're expecting almost 87 million acres, and we had 86 and a half in March. And the March report came from the surveys and the data that the USDA collects to make that judgment. This one comes in from other sources, some seed sales, some farmer feedback, and other things. So not huge changes, but they certainly were not good for price in June. We know what's happened. We're not going to spend a lot of time with that. But at those, we're still going to need what's especially good for corn. If we end up on the low side of that, let's just call it 90 million acres, we'll harvest 93% of that. The world's still going to need the U.S. to yield about 180 bushel crop. And remember, last year's record yield was 177.3.
Right.
And, both years have seen different growing styles for sure, but there's still a lot of time in front of us to see how the carpet rolls out.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the important point here is we're waiting for those numbers coming Friday, but we just had major weather impact, as you talked about, across that northern corn belt. Definitely going to impact a lot of acres there. We're also picking up some tough weather in the Carolinas, pretty dry, getting reports there. Corn's got at some critical stages there. So all of those factors are going to certainly impact the overall average bushels for corn come fall.
Yeah, because when you look at what it takes to produce a record bushel per acre yield, the heat over the eastern corn belt that everybody saw, a week ago lasted for about 10 days. You're talking about heat indexes well over 100 at that early stage of growth for the corn crop. While it wasn't during pollination, we have already had some things that, when you look at it, it makes it a little challenging to say, oh, yeah, this is a record crop. Now, last year we got one, and June was a lot drier and a lot hotter.
Yep.
So we have to go back to the fact that the technology, the products, the knowledge, everything that goes into this crop now, just the genetic advances, certainly are keeping up with a lot of the stress, but still we can't discount it entirely.
Yeah, you bring up a great point. We still have a tremendous amount of opportunity out there. The growers that have a good crop on the ground, take that, that crop from good to great, continue to feed that thing throughout the growing season. Market looks like it could have some opportunities for you potentially come fall for sure.
Yeah, and a big part of that is you've got the speculative funds, which everyone has a love or hate affair with them, because if you're with them, you love them because they have so much money to move it. But when they are moving prices lower, you hate them because they have so much money to move the markets. And it's that becomes the big challenge. But as we sit here, this is the largest net short position in corn and beans. And when you look at the other products that the funds have ever had heading into the stocks and acreage report. So if they got leaned on and the USDA threw the producer a bone here, you could certainly see some fireworks heading into the fourth, no pun intended, on short covering and a lot of volatility. And something else just popped up on my 3 o'clock is that you've got crop ratings that are declining probably a little bit faster than everybody thought. But when you look at the excessive heat and some of the other things that have happened, it's not surprising, but it's still a little too early for us to get really excited about what that rating translates into final yield.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Now's a good time to take a deep breath, continue, steady the course where you can. And obviously, if you're in some of those impacted areas, certainly reach out to your Helena representative, look for alternatives there for cropping systems, but also stay in touch with folks like yourself, right, Jody, to make some good business decisions.
There's always opportunity in every market. And for all the end users that are talking to us, anybody with a feed lot or has got anybody feeding anything, there's some real opportunity here. And you look across at the cattle market, you had in some places an all-time record high of $199 cash trade last week. And we expect in the next couple of weeks, we'll see that kind of magic Mount Everest of $200 cash traded. But if we're going to restock the herd, you're in a position that while corn is low and feed is low, if you're planning on expanding to buy feeders to take advantage of really high prices, then those are the kind of things where you have to make sure all of your ends start to meet up. You buy your feed when it's cheap and you sell your cattle when they're expensive.
That's right. And if you're in the livestock end, now's the time to be making some moves in some of those areas for sure. So, well, Jody, it's kind of a sit and wait time of year, getting ready for the 4th of July. We're looking forward to having you here in Memphis, July 18th for the Innovation Expo. You're going to be with Chip Flory and Sean Haney from Real Ag Radio out of Canada. Boy, we're going to have a good time here. Looking forward to having you down here in Memphis.
It was a great event last year and appreciate being invited back. Chip and I always have a good time when we're on the air together. Looking forward to spend some time and meeting Sean, and it'll be a great day. It always is, and I hope everybody that can attend that has the opportunity.
You bet, folks. And if you're interested in attending the Innovation Expo here in Memphis to learn more about that, contact your Helena representative to learn more. Jody, thanks for joining us here on this episode of FieldLink.
Thank you, Bill.
Be sure to contact your Helena representative to learn more about the Innovation Expo, which will be held July 18th in Memphis, Tennessee.